Today we are looking at chord progressions, guys. We are going to take two absolute smashes from YouTube. One R&B type beat that has almost 3 million plays and one beat with over 6 million plays. That's a lot of plays. Now, I have my own R&B type beat channel and I've been blessed enough to have a video with over 1 million plays on it, and that has generated me a lot of sales and a lot of opportunities. So you need to take this knowledge and apply it to your own samples and beats. So guys, I'm going to make this so easy for you to understand and digest, and then add these similar kind of techniques and tricks to your own productions. The reason this is going to be so easy is because the original sample is in C sharp major, or the relative minor of that is A sharp minor, and there's a lot of black keys involved there. But what we're going to do is I'm just going to transpose everything down by a half step. So if we take everything down, we're going to be in C major, all of the white keys, and it's going to be really easy for you at any level to understand, I promise you. So stick with me here, guys. Now, the way we're going to do this is I'm going to show you the C major scale, which some of you may know already, but we're going to do that pretty quickly, and we're going to jump straight into chords, and this is a winning progression. Every chord is held for 1 bar. We're at 110 BPM, and the sound that is used in this is kind of like a 90s key guitar sound. It's got almost that kind of very late night chilled R&B Summer Walker type sound, and so for the sound itself I've used Zonology ST guitar. That's our progression, but let's just go right back to basics and start with the C major scale. Now, you heard that in its original key, but all I'm going to do here is take all this MIDI and we're going to drop it down by a semitone. Now everything, and this is the magic of working with MIDI, now we are in C major. So right here we've got the C major scale, and we start with a C, our 2 is D, our 3 is E, 4 is an F, G, A, 7 there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to 1 again. The reason that this progression sounds so R&B is because Denzel is using, or whoever made the sample itself is using, a 5-1 and then a 2-5-1. I'm going to go through what those are, but they are used all the time in R&B and in soul, neo soul. You've got many different ways to voice these chords. The way that they're voiced here, pretty simple as well, and that could be a key to why this is so successful. Now, sometimes the algorithm just blesses you, and other times, you know, you choose a winning progression and you keep it simple, and there's a reason why these things just take off like wildfire, because an artist or a writer can just vibe when they hear this beat. The impact is right there. They may sound kind of familiar because these progressions have been used many times, but they just work. That is why they are so successful. Let's look at this progression in its most basic form, which is this MIDI right here. So what we're doing is we're starting with a 4 chord. Now, in the original key, this is an F sharp major chord, and it is an F sharp major 7th chord, which is a very common chord in R&B. But as we've moved to C, let's create a F major 7 chord as our first chord. Guys, if you're liking this, follow me on Instagram. My handle is right here, B6 Production, and cop some of my free mini kits. The link is in the description. You've got bass midis, you've got all kinds of goodies in there. And if you like what you're seeing, then hit me up. I'd love to hear from you and hear what you're working on. So we have an F, an A, and a C, the 1, the 3, and the 5. We're going to add one more note, which is the major 7th. Now, that to find the major 7th, we just take the note that is directly below the root note, and in this case it would be an E. Put that on top, and we have the first chord in the progression. That's going to play for a bar, as I said before. We move on to our second chord in the progression, which is our first 5-1. So what that basically means is that we're temporarily making the chord after this chord a 1 chord. And the chord after this chord is our target chord, which is an A minor. And we are starting here with the 5 chord, which is an E, because an E is a 5th away from A. I'll say that again. An E is a 5th away, hence a 5-1 from A. When we're thinking about a 5-1 to this minor chord being our 1, we're going to build a major chord, a dominant chord, or altered dominant chord. And as these chords are quite simple, we are starting with an E major triad, which is just an E, G sharp, and a B. And then we are going to add one more note, which is the dominant 7th, which is a D. Our second chord becomes an E dominant 7th chord. And what's so nice about this is that the voices, by voices I just mean the note, are all leading into one another so well and so beautifully from the chord before. As you can see, This E drops down to this D, this C drops down to this B, and so on and so on. What have we got here? Our third chord, which is an A minor chord, and to build an A minor triad, we've got our A, we've got our C, we've got our E, and if we want to make that a minor seventh, we're just going to add a G in there as well. But that sounds really muddy and kind of a bit rubbish. All we do is we start experimenting with moving the voices around. We could keep an A down here though, because that's going to be our root note, our bass note. Sometimes, you know, if we had a 808 or some other kind of bass, it's what Denzel's got in the sample. I mean, whenever I'm transposing or working things out, I always listen for the bass notes, because the bass notes immediately tell me what the chord on top is. And then you can kind of like, when you've done a lot of ear training, you can kind of hear the voices within the chord. So let's try this voicing of an A minor seventh now. Ah, there we go. And I can tell that this is going to sound good just because there are certain voices here that are, again, going to be leading nicely into one another. It's always the clue you want to look for. We're actually nearly there with this whole progression, and it's just going to loop round. The only difference is going to be that the melody notes are going to slightly change, and some of the voicings are slightly different. I'm going to take you through the voicings in the next couple of bars, but let's just carry on building. What have we got here? Well, we have actually got a 2-5 back to this one chord here, which this is becoming this 4 chord in C major, this F major 7. We're seeing that as a 1 chord. What does that mean? Well, we're going to create a 2 chord for that 1 chord, which is a G, and we're going to make that a G minor chord, because when you have a 2-5-1 where your target chord is a major, you're going to go minor chord, then you're going to go major chord or dominant chord, and then you're going to go to your major 7th chord or any kind of major 9 or whatever you want there. Let's start by just making a G minor 7th chord, which is, and now let's immediately move this note up, and let's see how that sounds. Ooh, it already sounds good, right? And that's quite an empty chord. There's a bit of space between the voices, and sometimes that's also nice because it kind of spreads that voicing a little bit and just gives it that flavor. And our last chord in the progression is just a C major, C, E and G. And we can make that a dominant chord by adding an A sharp here. Oh, and we have a beautiful progression there. So 4 chord, a 5 chord to the 6 chord, and then a 2, 5 to back to our 1 chord again. Whole progression. However, this is a little bit cheesy going down here. And that's not exactly what happened in the actual track itself. Now, the actual voicings are as follows. How does this differ? The most important one for me between this E chord and this A chord, there's a couple of shared notes, and what that does is really interesting. So listen to this. First of all, this empty space works really well. Instead of having a note that this kind of runs into, it almost takes you by surprise that there's a bit of space in that chord. And again, space is your friend. The other thing that I love is this pedal tone on the D. By pedal tone, I just mean this note is continuing through in both chords. We've got a little bit of movement here where this G sharp is moving down to a G, and we've got another note that stays the same. When only 1 or 2 notes move within chords, it creates really, really nice harmony, movement and variation between the different chords. So the cool thing about these chords is this little melody that he's bringing out by going dee da. If I take them out, you'll see the difference that makes. It's okay, but with these melodies in, because the top note of any chord is really what the ear will immediately grab onto. And then it's pretty much the same the second time around. However, the melody goes up. Ba, 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 and we drop back down again. And that, in a nutshell, is the winning progression for Love. So let's look at the progression for the next tune, which smashes the views even on this. This track actually has like 5.7 million views on YouTube and probably more streams across other platforms such as BeatStars, and I believe it's produced by either Lowlife or Formos. I can't find the exact producer's name, but shout out to whoever made it. It's fire. This is at 88 BPM, and the cool thing for us is that this beat is actually in C major or A minor, however you want to look at it. It's quite a simple progression, but the cool thing that he's done is just using like top notes as melody notes. This is the entire like 8-bar progression. Really, we're just going from a 4 to a 3 to a 2, and then we've got a 1 chord, or you could see this as like a 5 chord to the F chord, which is the first chord that starts the whole progression again. So very simple, descending. Let's have a quick listen. I mean, doesn't really get more simple than that. We've just got a lovely F major 7 here, which we saw how to create before, just like in its root position, F, A, C, and E. One sort of passing note that helps our melody to link to the next chord, which is an E minor 7 chord here. Just again, E, G, B, and D. Another passing note, which just leads us down to that D minor 7th chord, which exactly the same note spacings as here, but just moved down by a whole tone. These are just root position voicings right here for these chords. And then we've got this C major 7th, again in its root position, which is kind of like being used as a passing chord. There's various options for chords you could use here. You could use a C dominant chord and do a kind of a traditional 5-1, which is leading back to this F chord here. Or you could even go with a diminished chord, like a C sharp diminished chord, which would also work. So really, like, you've got choices for this passing chord here. The second time around, all we're doing is adding another note on top, changing the melody up, going with an A note on top, and it sounds to me like the F is muted on the chord. So we're just creating a kind of an inversion here and adding this note on the top, which also does appear on the bottom as well. That chord seems the same, that second chord. Then we kind of go Beba. We're going like our melody is going from C down to that A on this D minor 7th chord, and then we have just got this nice C major 7th again. However, we are putting this G on the top of the chord. Maybe a slightly different voice in here, but like essentially that's all we're dealing with. And then at some point in the beat, he takes out this C major 7th, just plays like a couple of passing notes instead for variation. And when the beat sort of drops after the here, we've got these little triads, kind of sprinkles, like kind of sound like that in the upper register, which is a really good technique for you to use to just keep the beat interesting, utilize like a higher part of the frequency range, but just give yourself again some variation. It doesn't feel like you're just kind of looping round. And the beauty in this is like it's simple, it leaves space for the artist. I mean, there's obviously a vocal going on underneath, which kind of adds to that emotion. We're all trying to kind of manipulate emotions here and put the writer in, or the artist in, a specific space. That's what this beat does so well, and I believe that's why it's resonated. So guys, if you've learned something here, please like and subscribe and follow me, and click on the link in the top corner for some more fire content.